Representative Jefferson Moss. Seeing all present, having voted, voting will now be closed. HB 292, having received 70 yes votes, 0 no votes, passes this body, will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Let's move now. Today is Thursday, a Senate reading calendar day. Let me go, now that we're on the Senate third reading calendar, let me go to Representative Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move under suspension of the rules that first substitute Senate Bill 137, Fiscal Requirements for Local Governments and Nonprofits, Senator Bramble and Representative Eliason in the House, be lifted from rules, read the second time, and placed at the top of the Senate third reading calendar.
Thank you, Representative. The motion before us is a motion under suspension of the rules to move first substitute Senate Bill 137, Fiscal Requirements for Local Governments and Nonprofits, to be lifted from the Rules Committee.
Point of order.
State your point.
I got the wrong name for that. Sorry. Can I reread that motion again? I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Restate your motion, Representative.
I move under suspension of the rules that first substitute 137, State Auditor Physical Auditing and Reporting Amendment, Senator Bramble, Senator Eliason, be lifted from rules, and ripped from rules, read for the second time, and placed at the top of the Senate third reading calendar. So it was an auditor's bill.
Okay. So Chief Clerk reminds me that this bill had been read for a second time when we read in our committee reports. We were waiting for the fiscal note. So it has had its second reading. But under suspension of the rules, first substitute Senate Bill 137, State Auditor Fiscal Auditing and Reporting Amendments, be lifted from rules and placed at the top of the Senate third reading calendar. Would you like to speak to that motion, Representative?
What's the issue?
Yeah, just say that's correct.
This is a request from our auditor to get this bill out. There's a need for it to move out rapidly. I'm not sure what the reasoning is, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, motion. We've heard the motion before us. I'm going discussion to the motion. Seeing no lights, I'll place that motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Rule that motion passes. First substitute Senate Bill 137 will be lifted from the Rules Committee and placed at the top of the Senate third reading calendar under suspension of the rules. I also note that that passed by the required 2/3 vote. Madam Reading Clerk, for items on the Senate third reading calendar.
First substitute SB 137, State Auditor Fiscal Auditing and Reporting Amendments by Senator Bramble. This bill was heard in Government Operations with a vote of 703. The House sponsor is Representative Eliason.
Representative Eliason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Motion to amend.
Motion to amend is in order. Proceed.
Yes, I'd like to replace SB 137, State Auditor Fiscal Auditing and Reporting Requirements, with first substitute SB 137. Excuse me, the First Amendment.
So your motion, let me clarify what I thought I heard you say. You're moving amendment number 1 under your name, is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The motion before us is a motion to amend. It's amendment number 1 under Representative Eliason's name. Would you like to speak to the motion to amend, Representative?
Yes, the amendment provides a special effective date which would take effect upon signature of the governor due to a time-sensitive issue that I will address in the presentation.
Thank you. The motion before us is a motion to amend. It's amendment number 1 under Representative Eliason's name. Discussion to that motion. Seeing no lights, I'll place the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Rule that motion passes. The bill is amended and before us. Representative Eliason.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a straightforward bill that amends the threshold for certain accounting reports and duties of our state auditor. It amends the threshold for different levels of review for certain nonprofit corporations. It will save the auditor time and effort on entities that do not, in his or her opinion, do not need the level of review that others may need. It also authorizes the state auditor to seek judicial relief and take temporary custody of public funds if the state auditor determines an action is necessary to protect funds from being improperly diverted from their intended public purpose, and provides that the state treasurer may take temporary custody of public funds if ordered by a court to do so. It also makes a few technical corrections. The timing of this is very important as it regards to a pending legal action this week that the state auditor has been heavily focused on, and I personally believe, as a former auditor, is very time sensitive and in the public's best interest to expedite this bill for the sake of public interest. That would conclude my presentation, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Discussion to the bill. Seeing no lights, we'll come back to sponsor for summation.
I will waive.
Summation has been waived. Voting will now be open on first substitute Senate Bill 137, State Auditor Fiscal Auditing and Reporting Amendments as amended. Representative Ivory. Seeing all present having voted, voting will now be closed. First substitute Senate Bill 137, having received 72 yes votes, 0 no votes, passes this body as amended and will be transmitted to the Senate for its consideration. Let's go back to Representative Romero.
Mr. Speaker, personal privilege.
Personal privilege is in order.